2025 is going to be the year that we look back on and say that was the year that everything changed around crypto. Today, one of the biggest mistakes that everyone is making is just getting blinded by short-term price action. They're not thinking about the long term. They're not looking into the future at all. And I think, like I said, this is one of the biggest mistakes that most people are making. Because if we think about 2025 so far, it's been a huge year for crypto. Institutional players, enterprise players, even the entire US government is now telling us, guess what? The system is broken. We need crypto to fix it. Crypto is going to be a huge piece of the financial system. Stablecoins have now become 1% plus of the global M2 supply. Like 2025 has been one of the biggest years for crypto in its entire history. And when we think about that, we are looking at projects like Hedera that we have been tracking and following for years because of the utility behind them, the efficiencies behind them, the players that they've been working with. And I feel like 2025 is the clear confirmation that these types of projects are going to be 10 times, if not 100 times bigger than they are today. And you could think about that in price action. You could think about that in just the overall scope of the network itself. Because again, I do think that the price action will be much larger than where it is today. I think that a lot of these projects could very well be valued in trillions of dollars in market cap in the future because of what they are doing, what's possible with the tech, and the names that are actually adopting the tech as well. But let's also focus on that short term as well, because right now in the last month, HBAR has barely budged at all. This is what the last year looks like. In terms of trading view, we're just kind of squeezing here. We're rejecting off that upper trend line. This is to be expected, especially at a time where most of the market is still at resistance. We're still waiting for Ethereum to break to a new all-time high. We're still waiting for Bitcoin to break over the weekly resistance as well. So during this time, I'm just kind of focused on a lot of these charts, just kind of trade sideways like this, and then finally get that big spike to the upside. So I'm fine with boring price action for at least like the rest of August into September, where we do get the Fed rate cut decision and the market just goes crazy yet again. So during this time, am I expecting anything too crazy with HBAR's price action? Not exactly, but going forward, I do think that we will be looking at some very high prices for HBAR once we break over, this upper trend line and finally clear those highs that we just created back in the end of July. Because after this, well, we will be targeting the highs recently from January and then the all-time highs as well from 2021. So short term, not too bad at all. Just kind of boring. Don't really have to do much. Just have to wait and be patient. But in terms of Hedera, we are seeing more and more updates regarding, why Hedera is one of the best-in-class players for institutional adoption. For an example, recently, Hedera put out a great post on the 13th saying, trusted infrastructure for institutions proven at scale since 2018. Fortune 500 backed council governance validator network, fixed USD transaction fees, no front running, built-in sanctions, AML and KYC, fully encrypted messaging, hybrid optionality with HashSphere private and public. And these are the things that really makes Hedera completely different in a sense compared to other networks. We've talked about the efficiencies, we've talked about the speed, the scale, things like that. And although we can easily get caught up in just talking about the basics, there's so much more to Hedera that we're just not thinking about. Like, for example, even security, that ABFT, encryption is huge. Also, quantum resistant tech, like these things go a long way, especially when we're thinking about the future proof of these networks. Hedera is one of the best future-proof networks out there that has almost everything you need for institutional and enterprise-grade adoption at scale. And when we're thinking about this, right, they continue to tap in with some big players to build on their infrastructure. For example, Bison Link recently said that they are live on the Hedera testnet. This is institutional-grade RWA tokenization infrastructure that's now on the Hedera network built for scale, speed, and sustainability. From T-bills to private credit, we're unlocking capital markets for the new era. And we have yet to actually see, tokenized value get tracked on Hedera, but I would suspect that it's going to be in the billions and billions of dollars because of all of the announcements over time that we've seen with Hedera, even going all the way back to like 2022. So this has been 3 years in the making. Now, also, a lot of these accelerator programs that are, being announced, this is with some big names. For an example, big shout out to Generation Infinity. We have Breaking. Orange SA teams with the Hashgraph and DAR blockchain on $1 million plus hackathon, powering Africa's Web3 future on Hedera. This is one of the world's largest telecoms, 40.3 billion euros in revenue, 291 million customers, and 26 countries. Scale meets speed. Orange MEA serves 161 million people in 18 countries and operates 100 million plus mobile money accounts in 17. That reach is now connecting to Hedera's fast, secure, low-cost network to fuel Africa's Web3 transformation. The plan, this is all through Orange Digital Centers. Thousands will get Hedera training, earn certification, and compete for $1 million plus in prizes. The tracks are finance and tokenization, ESG and supply chain, AI and DePIN, and consumer apps. The partners, well, Orange MEA with connectivity, reach, and innovation hubs. The Hashgraph Association for funding, training, and also incubation. DAR blockchain for local networks, events, and developer communities. Together, they will create a pipeline for learning and then launching. And this is when the hackathon starts. So August 1st already started, and this goes on until September 30th. It is, hybrid, online plus on-site hubs in 20 plus cities. 10K, 10,000 plus participants is the target. Certification ensures every team starts with strong Hedera skills. And then beyond that, winners can join the THA's incubation program for funding, mentorship, and enterprise connections. Orange's footprint offers instant access to millions of users for pilots and products, and of course, the impact potential. Well, you have devs, enterprises, governments, and NGOs. This is all of the main focus. So this is actually very exciting. I think that this is huge, and it just goes to show you how fast the accelerated side of Hedera is becoming a reality. All of these hackathons, all of these events are building towards that accelerated adoption, accelerated expansion, and bringing more devs onto the Hedera ecosystem also provides more ecosystem, expansion as well, with more dapps, which leads to more users. I mean, this is just very exciting for the entire network. But also, talking about the network and talking about enterprise adoption and institutional adoption, let's go over here real quick. So in the beginning of August, there was a great video posted by the Hashgraph Association, and that was actually with Deloitte. And we have here from Hashport, the Hedera network is purpose-built for at-scale global distributed use cases that require speed, fairness, transparency, and trust. Come see for yourself why an ever-growing number of global organizations are choosing the network to build the decentralized applications of tomorrow. And when we're thinking about Deloitte, when we go over to their About section, we could see that they have been working with 90% of the Fortune 500 companies. This is a huge deal. They've been around for over 175 years. And listen closely to why Deloitte chose Hedera to build its green economy on. This is real-time transparency, reusable tech, and rapid tooling, ultra-low energy DLT, global ESG powered by the HBAR network. Check it out.
A nice story to tell is that a few years ago, when I was still working at Rabobank, we were already researching different kind of platforms that were out there for the carbon credit world. And back then, that's like 5 years ago, I already could find some platforms that were using blockchain technology. So I think that was very good. But then they did not provide sometimes all the source information, for example. So then you only had a hash. But if you don't know what the hash means, right? So if you're, like you said, a retail customer, then it still does not make a lot of sense. So, but from that 5 years ago until today, I still did a lot of research on the sustainability side and the applications and all the platforms that are out there around this topic. And I think it's really growing really fast, but it also has to do with platforms like Hedera, for example, that have these tooling and all these technological components that you can use and reuse, and an ecosystem that's growing around that to build on top of their layer. And I think that really helps, because that makes life easier if you can, of course, reuse some parts and tools that are already out there and also connect that in the ecosystem. So I think that really helps. And I think it's also really important, because I think a lot of stuff that's happening in the carbon credit space is not transparent. And companies are just buying carbon credits because they have to, but they don't really look like what's the quality. I think it's more and more a topic. They care more and more about high quality carbon credits. Until now, there's only a small percentage that is qualified as a high quality carbon credits, for example. So there's a lot of work to do here, and also a lot of space and room for different companies to develop different kind of platforms. If you claim that you have reduced your carbon emissions, but you did not, for example, that is related to the greenwashing. So you say you're doing very well and very green, but in the end, you cannot state that the claim is really made. But it's also a bit sad because a lot of companies, of course, don't know. So they think they did well with buying carbon certificates and all those different kind of products that are out there. But if you cannot, rely on the underlying source, then it will become really hard to make the claim also valuable. So that's what's happening at the moment. So a lot of companies buy these credits, they don't know, and then in the end they will get a fine because they greenwashed and they said they did things very good that they did not. So I think that's a shame, because I think the intention of those different companies is good, right? They just want to make sure their emissions are lowered or offsetted by these carbon credits. But then, I think a lot of platforms don't offer the service to really go back to the source where the information is coming from.
And the best part about this is this actually builds upon one of the earlier use cases for Hedera, which was the tracking and tracing. That's why the real-time transparency is such a big deal here. But it also kind of goes back to the Hedera GC, why we have all these big players leveraging Hedera, why we constantly see more and more adoption of Hedera growing day in and day out. We've been talking about the tokenization use cases. We've been talking about the enterprises for years. I mean, even if we go over to Hedera's website real quick, I know that it's going to go through all of this verification real quick, 1 second. But if we go over to Hedera's website and we look at the enterprise applications, there's some great applications here. I know that a lot of people will say, all right, well, some of these are not even building on Hedera. Yeah, I get that. I understand that there's a lot of, players that haven't done much over the last couple of years, but a few that have, are the ones that really kind of stand out. Like Aberdeen has been tokenizing on Hedera with Archix, which is a huge deal. On top of that, Australian Payments Plus is now leveraging Hedera for supply chain finance and for even, new use cases around tokenized assets with central banks, the Australian Central Bank. If we just scroll through some of these lists, we can go over names that are actually doing things with Hedera, that are not just, speculating and hyping up, use cases that will just never become a reality. There's actually some great enterprise grade adoption happening for Hedera. Now, I know that everyone has always said over the years, well, we want to see transactions on the network, and don't worry, I'm right there with you. But the main thing that we're looking at here is that we are now witnessing major regulatory moves happening in and outside of the US that's actually going to allow a lot of these enterprise grade use cases to get the green light. And I feel like that's where we're kind of at, where we're at this like standstill moment where all of these big players want to tap into DLT, they want to utilize it at scale, but they just can't because of regulatory boundaries. So once this space has full-on clarity, these projects like Hedera that have names like Deloitte lined up, that are powering 90% of the Fortune 500 companies, that's going to be a huge deal. It's going to be a huge, it's the main thing about Hedera, and the main thing that I talk about even with other projects, like for an example, Ripple, is that they've been preparing for this moment for years. They're already at the forefront of it. So the second that we get regulatory clarity, we are going to see these networks boom in a huge way, which leads us back to price action. So right now, we're caught up in the short term. We understand that everyone wants to make money here, right? I want to make money here. You guys want to make money here. So we're just watching the chart. We're waiting for that big all-time high to get broken from 2021. But on top of that, I don't get caught up in the short term. I don't get caught up in the idea of like, oh, I want this to happen this week or next week. It would be great, but I'm also looking at the long term here. I'm looking at the scope of tokenization at scale. I'm looking at, how these markets are essentially moving on chain through names like Hedera. And we're talking about a market that has almost a $4 trillion market cap. It just recently did have a $4 trillion market cap. And some of these markets that are being tokenized are in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. So we have a very exciting journey in front of us to go on. And right now, if we look at some of these projects like Hedera, they're valued at a fully diluted value of $12 billion. I easily see HBAR being valued at $120 billion. And I could see it in the long term being valued at $1+ trillion. I don't think that that's crazy to think about when we are looking at how early we are when it comes to this technology and the early adoption phase as well. I know that, You know, crypto's been around for years now, since going all the way back to 2008 with Bitcoin. But up until just recently, most of the hype and speculation around crypto was simply just that. Now, 2025 is the year where we are witnessing these big players tokenizing on chain, tapping into public blockchains and utilizing them for specific things, like, for an example, JP Morgan tapping into Base for tokenized deposits. I mean, this is the year where we're actually starting to witness reality setting in for, you know, these networks and these use cases, which is extremely exciting stuff, because it means going forward we're going to just see these things accelerate and become much bigger than where they're at right now. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely like, subscribe, turn notifications on, because I'm free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, Nick, thanks for watching. Peace out.